There is a kind of evil that does not scream. It simply needs a smile at the right time and a pen placed in the wrong spot. I thought my mother's funeral was the worst day of my life until I arrived home and found the locks had been changed. My stepfather told me softly that he ran the house now. Then he made the biggest mistake of his life when he left behind one single document. My name is Zoe Sullivan, and for 34 years, I believed that grief was the heaviest thing a human being could carry. I was wrong. Betrayal is heavier because it does not just crush you, it unbalances you. It takes the solid ground of your memories and turns them into quicksand. The day we buried my mother, Briar Glen was drowning in a cold, unseasonal rain. It was the kind of weather that made the gray stones of the cemetery look like old teeth jutting out of the earth. I stood under a black umbrella that was not mine, shivering in a coat that felt too thin for the wind whipping off the Colorado foothills. My mother, Diane Sullivan, had been 49% of my world. The other 51% was currently occupied by a numbness so profound I could barely feel my toes. A stroke, that was what the doctors had said. Massive, sudden, a thief in the night that stole her voice, then her movement, and finally, her breath. Standing next to me was Rex Halston, my stepfather. He had his hand on my shoulder, a heavy, reassuring weight that I suppose looked comforting to the dozens of people gathered around the grave, to the neighbors, to Mom's friends from the library board, to the distant cousins who had flown in from Ohio. Rex was the picture of the grieving widower. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. His silver hair was combed back with dignified restraint, and his eyes were rimmed with just the right amount of red. "She was the light of this house," Rex said to Mrs. Gable, our next-door neighbor, his voice trembling just enough to sell the performance. "I don't know how Zoe and I will go on without her." I looked at him. He was dabbing his eyes with a white handkerchief. It was a beautiful performance. Truly, if I worked in casting instead of compliance, I would have hired him on the spot, but I work in compliance at Ridgeway Mutual Solutions. My entire career is built on noticing when the numbers do not add up, when a signature looks slightly off, or when a policy is being bent until it breaks. And something about Rex was bending. It started at the funeral home, an hour before we came here. We were in the private viewing room. The air smelled of lilies and formaldehyde, a cloying sweetness that sticks to the back of your throat. I was saying goodbye to Mom, fixing the collar of her favorite blue silk blouse. Rex was pacing behind me. "I need to check if the car is here," he had said. I nodded, not looking away from Mom's face. I heard his footsteps recede, but they did not go to the door. They stopped near the small side table where the funeral director had placed Mom's personal effects. The bag contained the clothes she had worn to the hospital, her watch, and her purse. I turned my head. Just a fraction. It was a reflex. Rex was not checking the door. He was standing over the bag. His hand moved with the speed of a striking snake. He reached into the side pocket of Mom's leather tote, his fingers curling around a ring of keys. I knew those keys. There was a silver house keychain and a small brass one for the back shed. He slipped them into his suit pocket in one fluid motion. Then he looked up and saw me watching him. For a second, the mask slipped. His eyes were hard, calculating, devoid of any sorrow. But just as quickly, the grief returned. He offered me a sad, watery smile. "Just checking to make sure they didn't lose anything. Zoe, your mother would have hated if things went missing." He did not put the keys back. Now, standing at the grave, that memory played on a loop in my mind. Why would he take her keys? He had his own set. We all did. I had a key to the house I grew up in, the house Mom had owned since before she ever met Rex. "Zoe," Rex said, squeezing my shoulder again. The service was over. People were drifting toward their cars. "Listen, I know you are overwhelmed. You should take a few days. Don't worry about the administrative side of things." "Administrative side?" I asked. My voice sounded rusty. "The death certificates, the bank notifications, the bills," Rex said, guiding me toward the waiting limousine. "I have already called my lawyer. We are handling the probate. You are grieving. Sweetheart, you focus on healing. I will handle the paper, the accounts, even the mail. You don't need to burden yourself with the boring stuff." He emphasized the word mail. It was subtle, but it was there. A slight pressure on the syllable. "I can help," I said. "I'm good with paperwork. Rex, it's my job." "Nonsense." He dismissed me with a wave of his hand. "You are the daughter. You mourn. I am the husband. I protect." We rode back to the house in silence. Or rather, I was silent. Rex spent the 20-minute drive on his phone, typing furious text messages while shielding the screen from my view. When the reception ended and the last guest had eaten the last ham sandwich, I felt a desperate need to be alone in my old room. I wanted to smell Mom's perfume in the hallway. I wanted to see the books on her nightstand. I wanted to feel closer to her. "I think I will stay here tonight," I told Rex as I started gathering the trash from the living room. "I don't want to drive back to my apartment." Rex froze. He was standing by the fireplace, swirling a glass of scotch. "Oh, Zoe, I don't think that is a good idea." "Why not?" "I need space," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "To be with her memory, just me. You understand, don't you? It's been hard on our marriage lately. Her sickness. I need to say goodbye to my wife in private." It was a strange request. Mom had not been sick for long. It was a stroke. Sudden. But he looked so pathetic, so broken, that I relented. I was 34 years old. I had my own apartment 20 minutes away. Fighting a grieving widower for territory on the day of the funeral felt petty. "Okay," I said. "I will come by tomorrow morning to pick up some of my things, and some of hers. I want the photo albums." "Tomorrow afternoon," he corrected quickly. "Give me the morning." I drove home, but I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster. The image of the keys vanishing into his pocket would not leave me alone. The next day, I did not wait until the afternoon. I arrived at the house at 9 in the morning. The driveway was empty. Rex's car was gone. I felt a surge of relief. I could go in, grab the albums, maybe sit in Mom's chair for a moment without his performative sorrow hovering over me. I walked up the front steps. The wood still damp from yesterday's rain. I pulled my keychain out of my purse, the brass key, worn smooth by 20 years of use, slid into the lock. It stopped halfway. I frowned and jiggled it. Nothing. I pulled it out and tried again. It hit a hard metal barrier inside the cylinder. I took a step back and looked at the hardware. It was shiny, new, gold-toned instead of the brushed nickel Mom had installed last year. He had changed the locks. In less than 24 hours since we put her in the ground, Rex had changed the locks on my mother's house. I felt a heat rise up my neck, a mixture of confusion and rage. I pounded on the door. "Rex, Rex, I know you are in there." No answer. I walked around to the back. The kitchen door was also new. The windows were locked tight. I was locked out of my own childhood. I sat on the back porch swing, the one Mom and I used to sit on to watch the fireflies. And I waited. I waited for 2 hours. At 11 o'clock, Rex's sedan pulled into the driveway. He got out, carrying a briefcase. When he saw me sitting on the front steps, he didn't look surprised. He didn't look apologetic. He looked annoyed. "I told you this afternoon, Zoe," he said, walking past me to unlock the door. "You changed the locks," I said, standing up. My hands were shaking. "Why would you change the locks? Rex?" He pushed the door open and turned to face me. He blocked the entrance with his body. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, and for the first time, he used that size to intimidate me. "Security," he said flatly. "With the obituary out, people know the house is vulnerable. I couldn't be too careful. You locked me out. I have a key." "You had a key to the old lock," he said. "This is my house now. Zoe, I need to control who comes and goes. My house." He didn't say our house. He didn't say your mother's house. "I want to come in," I said, stepping forward. "Actually," he said, holding up a hand. "Wait here." He stepped inside and closed the door in my face. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I stood there, stunned, for 3 long minutes. When the door opened again, Rex was holding a medium-sized cardboard box. He shoved it into my arms. It was not heavy. "What is this?" I asked. "Items," he said. "Personal effects. I went through her things this morning. I packed up what I thought you would want. Old photos, her high school yearbook, that ceramic cat she liked." "You went through her things." I felt bile rise in my throat. "Without me." "I told you, I am handling it," Rex said. His voice was calm, reasonable, terrifying. "Zoe, we need to have a difficult conversation. I did not want to do this today, but you are pushing me." He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. "Your mother left a mess, Zoe. A financial disaster." I stared at him. Mom was the most organized person I knew. She had spreadsheets for her grocery budget. "She hid it well," Rex sighed, shaking his head. "Gambling debts, bad investments, credit cards you didn't know about. The estate is underwater, deeply underwater, the house, the savings. It is all gone to creditors. I am trying to salvage what I can. But frankly, there is nothing left for you." "I don't believe you," I whispered. "Believe what you want," he said, his eyes cold. "The will is very simple. It leaves everything to the surviving spouse to handle debts. That is me. This box. This is me being generous. Legally. Even those photos are assets I could sell to pay off her loans." He pointed a finger at the box in my arms. "Take it. Go home. Grieve. Let me clean up this mess. Do not come back here unless I invite you. It is for your own good. I don't want you to see the foreclosure notices when they start pasting them on the door." He stepped back and closed the door. The sound of the lock clicking shut echoed like a gunshot in the quiet suburban street. I drove home in a daze. My apartment felt foreign, cold. I placed the cardboard box on my kitchen table and just stared at it. I did not cry. I was past crying. I was in the cold, analytical place that I usually reserved for auditing compliance reports at Ridgeway. Gambling debts. It was a lie. Mom thought buying a lottery ticket was a tax on people who were bad at math. Bad investments. Mom kept her money in low-yield municipal bonds because she was terrified of risk. I opened the box. Rex had been thorough in his cruelty. It was filled with junk. A chipped mug. A scarf with a moth hole. A stack of photos from the 80s where Mom's eyes were closed. It was a collection of things that said, "This is what you are worth." I started pulling things out, anger vibrating in my fingertips. I grabbed a stack of old paperback romance novels he had thrown in at the bottom. Mom used to read these on vacation. As I fanned through the pages of a dog-eared book titled The Duke's Secret, a piece of paper fluttered out. It was not a bookmark. It was a piece of Ridgeway Mutual stationery. I froze. Mom used to ask me for scrap paper from work for her grocery lists. I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Mom's sharp, angular script, but it was shaky, as if she had written it in a hurry, or perhaps, in fear. It read, "Zoe, if you are reading this, Rex has likely told you that I left nothing. He has likely told you that I was in debt. Do not believe the smile. If he says I am empty-handed, go to the one place he cannot touch. Ask about the blue folder." I read it twice, then 3 times. My heart hammered against my ribs. Ask about the blue folder. She knew. She knew he would do this. She knew he would change the locks and rewrite history. I looked at the date scribbled in the corner of the note. It was dated 3 weeks ago, 2 days before the stroke. I looked at the box of trash Rex had given me, thinking he was dismissing me, thinking he was erasing me, but he had made a mistake. In his arrogance, he had handed me the map. Rex Halston thought he had won. He thought he was the new king of the castle because he held the keys. But he didn't know what I did for a living. He didn't know that I hunt buried things for a paycheck. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. My mother was not broke, and she was not stupid. I picked up my phone. I was not going to call Rex. I was not going to scream. I was going to find out what a blue folder was, and I was going to use it to bury him. 3 days after the funeral, Rex invited me back to the house. The text message was brief and framed as an olive branch. It said that we needed to clear the air and handle the boring paperwork so we could both move on with our lives. He used the word healing. I have learned that when a man like Rex talks about healing, he usually means amputation. I parked my car on the street because the driveway was occupied by a silver Lexus I did not recognize. When I walked up to the front door, I did not bother reaching for my keys. I knew they would not work. I knocked, and Rex opened the door wearing a casual beige sweater that made him look like a kindly grandfather from a catalog. He ushered me into the living room. The air was stale, the windows closed tight. Sitting on the sofa was a man I had vaguely met once at a barbecue years ago, Arthur Vance. He was Rex's friend, a lawyer who mostly handled real estate closings and minor traffic violations, not estate law. But there he was, sitting with a legal pad on his knees, smiling a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. On the coffee table, right in the center, sat a stack of documents. They were crisp, white, and stapled with precision. Rex sat in Mom's favorite armchair. It made my stomach turn to see him there, claiming her space so effortlessly. "Zoe, thanks for coming," Rex said, gesturing for me to sit on the love seat. "Arthur and I have been going over the numbers. It is worse than I thought. Honestly, the debts are piling up, but I have found a way to handle it, so it does not affect your credit or your future." Arthur Vance nodded. "We want to keep this simple. Zoe, probate court is a nightmare. It is public, it is expensive, and it takes years. Rex is willing to absorb the liabilities, but to do that, we need to streamline the asset transfer." Rex leaned forward, pushing the stack of papers toward me. "It is just a standard formality," he said softly. "It authorizes me to deal with the creditors directly. This way. They do not harass you. You just sign, and I take on the headache. It is the last thing I can do for Diane, to protect her daughter." My compliance training at Ridgeway Mutual kicked in immediately. Rule number 1, if someone rushes you to sign, they are hiding a clause. Rule number 2, if they say it is for your benefit, it is usually for theirs. I picked up the stack. It was heavy. "I'm going to read it," I said. Rex exchanged a quick, almost imperceptible glance with Arthur. "Of course," Arthur said, though his tone suggested I was being unreasonable. "Take your time. But the banks close in 2 hours, and we were hoping to get this filed today to stop the interest from accruing." I ignored him and flipped past the first page, which was a generic cover letter. I scanned the legal jargon. It was dense, deliberately obtuse language about administrative authority and tax positioning. But on page 4, paragraph 3, I saw it. Disclaimer of interest. I read the sentence twice to be sure. "The undersigned hereby disclaims, renounces, and surrenders any and all interest, right, or title to the estate of Diane Sullivan, whether by will, intestate succession, or otherwise." I looked up. The room felt suddenly very cold. "This is not a purely administrative document." "Rex," I said, keeping my voice steady, "this is a disclaimer of interest." Rex blinked, feigning ignorance. "It is, well, that is just legal speak for letting me handle the accounts. Zoe, like I said." "No," I said. I placed the papers back on the table and flattened my hand over them. "This says I am voluntarily giving up my inheritance. If I sign this, I am saying I do not want anything, not a cent, not a photo album, nothing." Arthur cleared his throat. "It is a tax strategy. Zoe, if you disclaim the assets, they flow to the spouse, who has a marital deduction. It saves the estate 40% in taxes. Rex will, of course, take care of you privately. This just keeps the government out of it." "Then put that in writing." I said what Rex asked, his brow furrowing. "Write a separate contract stating that if I sign this disclaimer, you agree to pay me my share of the estate." Rex let out a long, disappointed sigh. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Zoe, look at me." I looked at him. "I am your stepfather. I have been in your life for 10 years. Your mother just died. And you are sitting here talking about contracts. You think I am trying to cheat you. Me, the man who paid for your car insurance when you were 22, the man who held your mother's hand while she took her last breath." It was a masterclass in deflection. He did not answer the question. He attacked the character of the person asking it. I am not talking about the past. Rex, I am talking about this document. I am not signing a disclaimer. Rex stood up. The kindly grandfather act evaporated. He walked to the window and looked out at the street. I am trying to save you from her debt. Zoe, if you accept the inheritance, you accept the liabilities, you will be bankrupt in 6 months. I am offering to take that bullet for you, and you are treating me like a criminal. Show me the debts. I said, show me the statements. If Mom was in that much trouble, I want to see the red ink. Arthur stood up too, gathering his briefcase. I think we should give Zoe some time to cool down. Rex, she is obviously very emotional right now. Grief makes us irrational. I am not irrational. I said, standing to meet them, and I am not signing. Rex turned to look at me. His face was a mask of pity. You are making a mistake, a very expensive mistake. I walked out of that house with my heart pounding in my ears. I did not sign, but I felt like I had lost something just by being there. The retaliation began the next morning. It started with a text from my Aunt Sarah, Mom's younger sister in Ohio. Zoe, I just got off the phone with Rex. I can't believe you are fighting him over money before your mother is even cold in the ground. He is trying to save the house, and you are demanding payouts. I thought we raised you better. I stared at the screen, my thumbs hovering. Rex had spun the narrative overnight. To the family, I was the greedy stepdaughter looking for a payday, while he was the grieving husband trying to manage a financial crisis. He had poisoned the well. I tried to call Sarah, but she sent me to voicemail. 2 hours later, while I was sitting at my desk at Ridgeway, the receptionist called me to the front. There was a man waiting for me. He was not a client. He was a process server. He handed me a thick envelope in front of my colleagues. Zoe Sullivan. You have been served. I took the envelope back to my cubicle, my face burning. Inside was a notice from the probate court. Rex had filed a petition to be appointed as the personal representative of the estate. The petition stated that the decedent died intestate without a will, and that as the surviving spouse, he had priority, without a will. That was a lie. Mom had a will. She had shown it to me 5 years ago. It was simple, splitting everything 50-50 between Rex and me. But if Rex had destroyed the physical copy in the house, and if I could not find another one, the state law would default to him. I grabbed my phone and walked out to the fire escape to call Mom's bank. I needed to stop him from accessing her accounts before a judge ruled on this. I dialed the number for the local branch of Harborline Trust. Hello, my name is Zoe Sullivan, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. My mother, Diane Sullivan, passed away recently. I am concerned about unauthorized access to her accounts. There was a pause, followed by the clicking of a keyboard. I am sorry for your loss, Ms. Sullivan, the banker said. However, I see a note on the file here. We have received documentation regarding the estate administration. Yes, but that is being contested. I said, you need to freeze the funds. I cannot do that, the voice said, detached and professional. Unless you are the court-appointed administrator or a joint account holder, I cannot discuss the details of the account with you, but I am her daughter. That does not grant you legal authority. Ma'am, you will need to have your lawyer contact our legal department. I hung up, frustrated. Rex was moving at light speed. He knew the system. He knew that possession was 9/10 of the law, and he was grabbing everything he could hold. That weekend, I drove past the house. I parked 2 blocks away and walked down the street, keeping my hood up. A white van was parked in the driveway. It had the logo of a local estate liquidator on the side. I watched from behind a neighbor's hedge as 2 men carried out a large familiar object wrapped in moving blankets. The shape was unmistakable. It was the grandfather clock that had stood in our hallway since I was a baby. It was an antique, worth maybe $4,000. Then came the paintings, the landscapes Mom had collected from local artists. He was not just selling things. He was liquidating the evidence of her life. He was turning assets into cash that could disappear into pockets where probate courts could not look. If I tried to stop him now, he would just claim he was raising money to pay the debts he kept talking about. I wanted to run up the driveway and scream. I wanted to tackle the movers. But I knew that was exactly what Rex wanted. He wanted a scene. He wanted the neighbors to call the police so he could point at me and say, "See, she is unstable." I turned around and walked back to my car, feeling a physical ache in my chest. On Monday, the stress finally caught up with me at work. I work in compliance, analyzing risk reports for insurance policies. It requires absolute focus. You have to spot the anomaly in a sea of data. But that Monday, the numbers were swimming on the screen. All I could see was Rex's smug face and the empty space where the grandfather clock used to be. I missed a critical flag on a commercial liability renewal. It was a sloppy mistake, one that could have cost the company $50,000 if my manager, David, had not caught it during the final review. David called me into his office at 2 p.m. "Zoe, this is not like you," he said, sliding the report across his desk. "You have been staring at the same page for 3 hours. I am sorry." "David," I said, rubbing my temples. "My mother, it has been a lot." "I know," he said, his voice softening. "But I also got a call today." My head snapped up. "A call from who your stepfather called HR." David said. He was concerned. "He told them you are having a severe reaction to the grief. He mentioned you might be erratic." My blood ran cold. Rex had called my job. He was preempting me. He was planting the flag of insanity before I could even open my mouth. He had no right to do that. I said, my voice rising, "He is lying." David held up a hand. "Zoe, you just missed a Tier 1 compliance flag. That is a fireable offense. I do not think you are erratic, but I do think you are compromised. You are burned out. I am fine," I insisted, though I could feel tears pricking my eyes. "You are not fine," David said firmly. "I am putting you on mandatory administrative leave for 2 weeks. Take the time. Sort out the family business. Do not come back until you can focus on the numbers." I walked out of the office carrying a box of my personal things for the second time in a week. First my mother's house, now my job. Rex was systematically dismantling the pillars of my life. He was isolating me, stripping me of resources, and discrediting my voice. I sat in my car in the parking lot of Ridgeway Mutual, the engine idling. I felt small. I felt defeated. I had no lawyer, no access to the accounts, and my own family thought I was a vulture. I reached into my purse to find a tissue, and my fingers brushed against the folded piece of paper I had found in the romance novel. If Rex says I am white-handed at the one place he cannot touch, ask about the blue folder. I pulled the note out and smoothed it against the steering wheel. Rex was winning the war on the surface. He was winning the battle of public opinion, the battle of speed, and the battle of brute force. But he was fighting a conventional war. He thought this was about bullying a stepdaughter into submission. He did not know about the blue folder. I wiped my face. I stopped crying. Mom had anticipated this. She knew he would cut off the money. She knew he would lie to the family. She knew he would try to break me. That was why she did not leave the will in the desk drawer. That was why she did not trust the house safe. I had been trying to fight Rex by yelling at the walls he had built. That was a waste of energy. I needed to stop reacting to his moves and start making my own. I put the car in gear. I was not going home to sulk. I was going to find out what my mother had hidden. If Rex wanted to play games with paper, I would show him that paper cuts could bleed a man dry. I typed the name of Mom's old estate planning firm into my GPS. It was time to stop being the victim and start being the auditor. The address for Calder and Rook Estate Law was buried in a stack of old holiday cards I found in the bottom of a kitchen drawer at my own apartment. My mother was the type of person who saved return addresses, tearing the corners off envelopes just in case she needed to send a thank you note 3 years later. I found a Christmas card from 5 years ago sent by a woman named Margaret, who I vaguely remembered was a paralegal Mom had befriended at her book club. The return address was a suite in a brick building downtown, not far from the courthouse. I took a personal day from my administrative leave, which felt like a bitter irony, and drove downtown. Briar Glen is not a large city, but it has a district where the old money lives, sleeping quietly in limestone buildings with brass plaques. Calder and Rook was one of those places. It smelled of lemon polish and billable hours. When I walked into the reception area, the silence was heavy. The carpet was thick enough to swallow the sound of my boots. Behind the high mahogany desk sat a young receptionist who looked like she was barely out of law school. She was typing furiously, her headset blinking. I waited for her to finish. When she looked up, her professional smile was practiced and tight. "Can I help you?" she asked. "My name is Zoe Sullivan," I said, resting my hands on the cool wood of the desk. "I am looking for the attorney who handled the estate planning for Diane Sullivan." She was a client here. The receptionist's fingers stopped moving. The smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Before she recomposed herself, she typed my mother's name into her system. I saw her eyes dart to a note on the screen, and then she looked at me with a different expression. It was guardedly polite, the way one looks at a liability walking through the door. "Ms. Sullivan," she said, her voice dropping a decibel. "Mr. Calder is the partner who oversaw that file. However, I show here that the representation was transferred." "Transferred?" I asked. "To whom? To Mr. Arthur Vance," she said. "We received a formal request to transfer all physical files regarding the Sullivan estate 3 days ago. 3 days ago, the day after the funeral. Rex had been faster than I could have imagined. He had not just changed the locks on the house, he had scrubbed the legal record. Did my mother authorize that transfer? I asked, knowing the answer. The request came from the personal representative of the estate. She said, "Mr. Rex Halston. Since he provided documentation of his status, we were legally obligated to release the files." I felt the door slamming in my face again. It was the same wall I had hit at the bank. Rex was using his assumed authority to erase the history of what my mother actually owned. "Thank you," I said, turning to leave. There was no point in arguing with the receptionist. She was just the gatekeeper. I was halfway to the heavy glass doors when I heard a voice behind me. "Ms. Sullivan." I turned. A woman had emerged from a hallway behind the reception desk. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, wearing a cardigan and reading glasses on a chain. It was Margaret, the paralegal from the Christmas card. She looked different than I remembered, more tired. Her shoulders hunched slightly under the weight of too many files. "Margaret?" I asked. She didn't smile. She walked past the receptionist, holding a stack of manila envelopes as a prop. "Walk with me," she said, not stopping. "I am going to the archives in the basement." I followed her. We bypassed the elevators and took the stairs, the heavy fire door clicking shut behind us, cutting off the polished silence of the lobby. The stairwell was concrete and cold. Margaret's heels clicked sharply on the steps. She did not speak until we reached the bottom landing, and she swiped a keycard to open a room that smelled of dust and old paper. Rows of metal shelving stretched out under buzzing fluorescent lights. It was a graveyard of disputes and resolutions. Thousands of boxes filled with the secrets of Briar Glen's dead. Margaret walked to the end of an aisle and stopped. She turned to face me, her expression severe but her eyes kind. "I am sorry about your mother, Zoe," she said. "Diane was a good woman. She made the best lemon tart I have ever tasted. She was terrified." I said, "I found a note." She told me to ask about a blue folder. Margaret let out a short, sharp breath. She looked around the empty room, paranoia radiating off her. "The blue folder," she whispered. "We used to joke about it. Your mother called it her in case of Rex file." "So it existed," I said. "It did." Margaret said, "It sat in the safe in Mr. Calder's office for 4 years. It was not part of the main client file. It was held in custody. Where is it now?" "Gone," Margaret said. "Rex Halston came in here on Tuesday morning. He had Arthur Vance with him. They had a court order regarding emergency access to estate documents. Mr. Calder is a good lawyer, but he is risk-averse. He handed it over. The blue folder, the main will, the trust documents, all of it. My heart sank. So he destroyed it." I said, "Likely." Margaret nodded. If Rex is as smart as Diane feared he was, that folder is ashes in a fireplace by now. I leaned against the metal shelving, the defeat washing over me. Then there is nothing. He won. Margaret hesitated. She looked at the door, then reached into the pocket of her cardigan. Rex took the files. She said softly, "But he did not understand how this office works. When we prepare a complex trust, we draft emails, we scan exhibits, we have digital backups that do not sit in the client folder. I cannot give you the file. Zoe, that would be a breach of privilege, and I would lose my pension." She pulled out a folded piece of paper, but I was cleaning out my own email outbox yesterday, deleting old correspondence. I found this. It is a printout of an email I sent to your mother 2 years ago when we were funding the trust. It is not the trust itself. It is just an attachment confirmation. I took the paper. It was a single sheet, a printout of an email thread. The subject line read, "Trust Certification, Exhibit C Review." I scanned the text. It was dry, boring legal talk. "Dear Diane, please find attached the revised Schedule A for your review before we finalize the funding of the Mercer Legacy Trust." The Mercer Legacy Trust, I repeated, not the Sullivan estate. "Your mother's maiden name was Mercer," Margaret said. "She established a revocable living trust 5 years ago. Rex was never a trustee. He was never a beneficiary of that specific trust." I looked at the paper again. There was a handwritten note in the margin of the email printout, in Margaret's handwriting. "Client instructed original Schedule A to be placed in safe deposit box 404. "Schedule A," I said, looking up. "In my line of work, Schedule A is the asset list. It is the inventory." "Exactly," Margaret said. "A trust is just an empty bucket until you put things in it. Schedule A is the list of things in the bucket. If the house, the accounts, and the investments were retitled into the name of the Mercer Legacy Trust, then they are not part of the probate estate. Rex has no authority over them." "But Rex is acting like he owns everything," I said. "Because he has the keys," Margaret said, "and because he thinks he destroyed the only map that tells you where the treasure is buried. He thinks if he hides the trust instrument, the trust ceases to exist." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper that barely rose above the hum of the ventilation system. "Diane was afraid of him. Zoe. She came in here once with a bruise on her arm she said was from a cabinet door. But she was shaking. She told me, 'If I die, do not let him sign for me. He practices my signature.'" The chill that went down my spine had nothing to do with the basement temperature. "Practices her signature," Margaret nodded. "You did not hear that from me. But you need to move fast. If he finds out about the safe deposit box, or if he finds a way to forge access to it." The schedule. A will disappear too, and without that list, you cannot prove what belongs to the trust. I folded the paper and put it in my bag. "Thank you, Margaret." "Get a lawyer," she said, turning back to the shelves. "And not a nice one. Do not get a family law attorney who wants to mediate. Get a litigator. Get someone who enjoys blood sport." I left the building with the single sheet of paper pressed against my side like a weapon. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the pavement. I sat in my car and looked at the email printout. Mercer Legacy Trust. My mother had not just hidden money. She had built a fortress, and Rex was currently squatting in the courtyard, pretending he owned the castle. I needed a general for this war. Margaret was right. I did not need a lawyer who would write polite letters. I needed someone who would kick the door down. I pulled out my phone and searched for litigation attorneys in Denver and the surrounding areas. I scrolled past the ones with smiling faces and slogans about protecting your family. I looked for the ones with sharp eyes and track records of aggressive wins. One name kept coming up in the forums I frequented for compliance officers: Catherine Shaw. She was a partner at a boutique firm called Shaw Miller. The reviews were polarized. Half of them were 5 stars, praising her tenacity. The other half were 1 star, written by people who had lost against her, calling her ruthless, cold, and a shark. She was perfect. I called her office. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, but a human being answered the phone. I told the assistant I had a trust fraud case involving a stolen inheritance and a potential forgery. I was given an appointment for 8 o'clock that same night. Catherine Shaw's office was not in the old money district. It was in a modern steel and glass tower that looked like a jagged knife slicing into the skyline. When I arrived, the reception was empty, but a light burned in a corner office. Catherine came out to meet me herself. She was a woman of indeterminate age, perhaps 40, with hair cut in a sharp bob as severe as a blade. She wore a black suit that looked like armor. "Zoe Sullivan," she said. She did not ask. She stated it. "Come in." Her office was chaotic but organized. Stacks of files covering every surface, but clearly categorized. She cleared a chair for me and sat behind her desk, steepling her fingers. "Tell me the story," she said. "And do not leave out the ugly parts." I told her everything: the funeral, the keys, the changed locks, the disclaimer of interest document Arthur Vance had tried to make me sign, the liquidation of the furniture, and finally, the conversation with Margaret and the email about the Mercer Legacy Trust. I handed her the printout. Catherine put on a pair of reading glasses and studied the document for a long time. She did not speak. She tapped a pen against the desk, a rhythmic, predatory sound. "Arthur Vance is an idiot," she said finally, tossing the paper onto the desk. "But Rex Halston is not." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Rex knows that a disclaimer of interest is the quickest way to bypass a trust he cannot legally break," she explained. "If you disclaim, the assets flow as if you predeceased your mother. Depending on the trust terms, that might make him the default beneficiary. He tried to trick you into cutting your own throat." She stood up and walked to a whiteboard covered in diagrams of another case. She wiped a small corner clean and wrote, "Mercer Legacy Trust" in red marker. "Here is the problem. Zoe, we know the trust exists. We know Schedule A exists, but we do not have them. The courts operate on evidence, not ghost stories. If we walk into a judge's chambers tomorrow and say Rex stole it, the judge will ask for proof. Rex will say there never was a trust, or that Diane revoked it before she died." She turned to look at me, her eyes intense. "But you said something interesting. You said he is selling the furniture. He is rushing the probate application. He is desperate to get the bank access." "Yes," I said. "He said she was in debt." Catherine laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "He is lying. If she was in debt, he would be walking away, not digging in. Men like Rex do not fight for scraps. He is fighting because there is a feast, and he is terrified you will find the menu." She walked back to her desk and leaned over, looking me dead in the eye. "He is not hiding the money. Zoe, money is hard to hide in the modern world. Digital footprints are everywhere. He is hiding the path to the money. He is hiding the legal vehicle, the trust that dictates where the money goes. He is trying to create a situation where the only visible path is the one that leads to him." "What do we do?" I asked. "We stop looking for the money," Catherine said. "We look for the irregularity. We look for the mistake. He is moving too fast. When people move this fast, they trip." She picked up the email printout again. "This note says, Schedule A is in a safe deposit box. That is our entry point. But we cannot just walk in. The bank is stonewalling you. They said only the authorized representative can access it." I said, "Correct," Catherine said. "And right now, thanks to his quick filing, that is Rex. But there is a back door. If we can prove that the safe deposit box is titled to the trust, and not to Diane Sullivan individually, then Rex's probate authority means nothing. His powers as a personal representative stop at the border of the trust." She sat down and pulled a retainer agreement from a drawer. "I cost $400 an hour," she said, "and I require a $5,000 retainer up front." I did not blink. I had $5,000 in my savings account. It was my emergency fund. Money I had saved for a new car or a medical crisis. This was an emergency. "I will write you a check," I said. Catherine smiled. It was the first time she had smiled, and it was terrifying. It was the smile of a wolf that had just caught a scent. "Good," she said. "Go home and sleep. Zoe, tomorrow, we are going to the bank, and we are going to ruin Rex Halston's day." I signed the check. My hand did not shake. For the first time since Mom died, I did not feel like a grieving daughter. I felt like a plaintiff. As I drove home, the city lights blurring past, I replayed Catherine's words. He is hiding the path. Rex had tried to erase the map. He had tried to burn the bridges. But he had forgotten one thing. I was a compliance specialist. I spent my life looking at broken paths and figuring out where they were supposed to go. Rex had left a paper trail, no matter how faint, and with Catherine Shaw holding the flashlight, I was going to follow it all the way to the truth. The blue folder might have been gone, but the ghost of it was about to haunt him. The war had just moved from the living room to the courtroom, and I was bringing ammunition. Harborline Trust and Bank was designed to make you feel small. The ceilings were vaulted like a cathedral. The floors were polished marble that echoed every footstep, and the tellers sat behind thick glass partitions that might as well have been castle battlements. When I had called them over the phone, I was just a grieving daughter begging for information. Today, I was walking in with Catherine Shaw. The difference was palpable. Catherine did not walk. She cut through the space. She wore a tailored crimson blazer that stood out against the gray and beige of the bank interior like a warning flare. I trailed a half-step behind her, clutching my purse, my heart hammering a nervous rhythm against my ribs. We approached the main desk. The woman behind the counter was the same one I had spoken to on the phone, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked up, ready to dispense the same rehearsed rejection she had given me days ago. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone flat. Catherine placed her leather briefcase on the counter. It made a heavy, solid thud. "We are here to see the branch manager regarding the Mercer Legacy Trust," Catherine said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried a frequency that commanded attention. "I am Catherine Shaw, retained counsel for Zoe Sullivan, the beneficiary." The teller sighed, removing her glasses. "As I explained to Ms. Sullivan previously, without the personal representative present." Catherine cut her off. She did not raise her voice. She simply slid a single piece of paper across the marble. It was the copy of the email Margaret had given me, the one referencing Exhibit C and the funding of the trust. "That is a confirmation of trust funding held at this institution," Catherine said. "Under banking regulations, you are required to acknowledge the existence of a fiduciary account to a named beneficiary. If you refuse, I will be filing a complaint with the State Banking Commission before lunch, and I will name you personally in the obstruction suit." The teller looked at the paper, then she looked at Catherine, then she looked at me. The color drained from her face. The name Mercer Legacy Trust seemed to trigger something specific in her training, or perhaps in a memo she had recently read. "Please wait one moment," she said, her voice suddenly trembling. She picked up her phone and whispered urgently. I watched her eyes dart toward the back offices. 2 minutes later, a heavy oak door opened, and a man in a navy suit hurried out. He was balding, with a sheen of sweat on his forehead, despite the aggressive air conditioning. "Ms. Shaw, Ms. Sullivan?" he asked, extending a hand that felt damp. "I am Robert Sterling, the branch manager. Please, come with me." He did not take us to a cubicle. He led us past the rows of tellers, through a secure door, and into a private conference room in the back. The walls were lined with dark wood, and the center of the room was dominated by a mahogany table that could seat Mr. Sterling closed the door and locked it. The sound of the latch clicking shut was heavy and final. The ambient noise of the bank, the counting of cash. The murmuring of customers vanished instantly. It was a vacuum of silence. "Please, sit." "Mr. Sterling said. He sat opposite us, clasping his hands together on the table. He looked nervous. Bankers usually look bored or superior. They only look nervous when they know there is a compliance issue that could cost them their license. "We are aware of the situation with Mrs. Sullivan's passing," Mr. Sterling began. "My condolences." "Save it," Catherine said. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a yellow legal pad. "Let us talk about the Mercer Legacy Trust. Does it exist, Mr. Sterling hesitated, then nodded. "It does. And is my client Zoe Sullivan, the named beneficiary? Yes, he said quietly. She is the sole primary beneficiary upon the death of the grantor, Diane Sullivan. I felt the air leave my lungs in a rush. It was real, for days. Rex had made me feel like I was crazy, like I was imagining a fortune that didn't exist. But here it was, confirmed by a man in a suit. I was not crazy. I was right. Then why? Catherine asked, leaning forward. Was my client told she had no access? Why is Rex Halston parading around town acting as if this trust is part of the general probate estate? Mr. Sterling loosened his tie. It is complicated. Make it simple, Catherine said. The account is currently in a state of soft freeze. Mr. Sterling said. Soft freeze, I asked. What does that mean? It means the assets are there, but we have flagged them for internal review, he explained. We had an attempted access event that triggered our fraud prevention protocols. What kind of access event? Catherine asked, her pen hovering over the paper. Mr. Sterling looked at me, his expression pained. 3 days after your mother passed, Mr. Halston attempted to transfer funds from the trust's checking account into a new external account. He presented a durable power of attorney document. Catherine let out a short, sharp laugh. A power of attorney expires at the moment of death. Exactly, Mr. Sterling said. We explained this to him. He became quite agitated. He insisted that the power of attorney was valid because he was the husband. We denied the transfer, however, because he is also petitioning for personal representative status in probate court. Our legal department advised us to freeze the trust assets until the court determines who the rightful trustee is. Wait, I said, my mind racing. Who is the trustee? If Mom died. Who runs the trust? Sterling opened a folder he had brought with him. According to the trust certification on file, upon the death of Diane Sullivan, the successor trustee was to be a corporate fiduciary or, if they declined, Mr. Halston could serve as a temporary trustee. But there were conditions. What conditions? Catherine demanded. Mr. Sterling slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a photocopy of a clause from the trust. In the event Rex Halston assumes the role of temporary trustee, he must file a full inventory and affidavit of assets with the institution within 30 days of the grantor's death. Furthermore, he is prohibited from liquidating, selling, or transferring any real property or investment assets until said affidavit is approved by the beneficiary. I read the words. Mom had handcuffed him. She had known he would try to grab the money, so she had built a wall. He could only touch the wheel if he told me exactly how much gas was in the tank. He hasn't filed the affidavit. Have you? Catherine asked. No, Mr. Sterling said. He has not, which is why we have not given him control of the funds. But he has been pressuring us. He calls every day. He is trying to bypass the trust, Catherine said, making a note. He wants to drag the assets into probate where he controls the narrative. She looked up at the manager. Now, let us talk about the safe deposit box. Mr. Sterling stiffened. Box 404. Margaret told us the Schedule A, the list of assets, is in that box. I said, I need to see it. Mr. Sterling shook his head. I cannot let you open it. Not yet. Until the trustee issue is resolved. The box is sealed. Catherine narrowed her eyes. I want the access log. The manager blinked. I beg your pardon. I want the access log. Catherine repeated, her voice turning to steel. I want to know who has entered that box in the last 2 weeks. That is not confidential financial data. That is physical security data. My client is the beneficiary. She has a right to know if the physical integrity of the trust's assets has been compromised. Mr. Sterling hesitated for a long moment. Then he stood up. I can provide the log history. Wait here. He left the room. The silence rushed back in. He is terrified. Catherine whispered to me. Why, I asked. Because they let Rex do something they shouldn't have. She said, banks don't freeze accounts unless they made a mistake and are trying to cover it up while they fix it. Mr. Sterling returned with a single sheet of paper. He placed it in front of us. I looked at the list of dates and times. My finger traced down the column. February 12th, Diane Sullivan. February 14th, Diane Sullivan. March 3rd. Rex Halston. March 3rd. That was 2 days after Mom died. That was the morning he changed the locks. He was here. I whispered. He came here before the funeral. And look at the time, Catherine said, pointing. 9:15 in the morning. The bank opens at 9. He was waiting at the door. Mr. Sterling, Catherine said, looking up. How did Rex Halston get into this box on March 3rd? If the power of attorney was invalid for the transfer, it was invalid for the box. Mr. Sterling's face turned a shade of gray I had never seen on a living person. That is the matter in question, he said. The employee who granted him access is no longer with the branch. She was a junior associate. Mr. Halston was very persuasive. He told her he needed to retrieve a burial deed. She bypassed the death certificate check, so he stole the contents. I said, my voice rising. He went in, took the Schedule A, took the trust document, and left. That is why he is so confident. He thinks he erased the evidence. Catherine placed a hand on my arm to silence me. She was looking at Sterling with a predator's focus. Mr. Sterling, if you allowed an unauthorized person to access a trust safety deposit box and remove assets, this bank is liable for the entire value of that trust. We are talking about a negligence lawsuit that will make the morning news. Mr. Sterling wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. We are aware of the exposure. Ms. Shaw, that is why we issued the notice of irregularity. He pulled one last document from his folder. It was stamped with red ink, internal use only, notice of irregularity. He pushed it toward us, keeping his fingers on the corner as if he were afraid to let it go. We normally do not share this, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. But if you are going to court, you should know. When Mr. Halston accessed the box on March 3rd, he was required to sign the entry card, and Catherine asked, and we compared his signature on that card with the signature on the power of attorney document he had on file. He paused, looking at the door to make sure we were still alone. They match perfectly. Mr. Sterling said, too perfectly. What do you mean? I asked. Human beings never sign their name exactly the same way twice, he said. There are always microscopic variations in pressure, angle, loop size, but the signature on the entry card and the signature on the power of attorney document are identical, digitally identical. Catherine's eyes went wide. He used a stamp, or a machine, Sterling said, or he traced it. But there is something else. The power of attorney document itself, the one he used to try and move the money, it is dated February 28th. That was the day Mom had the stroke. I said, she was in a coma. She couldn't sign anything. Exactly, Sterling said. We have flagged the document as potentially fraudulent. That is why the account is frozen. We suspect Mr. Halston does not just have unauthorized access. We suspect he has a forged authorization. I stared at the paper. A notice of irregularity. It was a dry banking term for a crime. Rex hadn't just bullied me. He hadn't just played mind games. He had committed a felony. Catherine snatched the paper from under Sterling's hand. I am taking this, she said. Mr. Sterling didn't argue. I think that would be best. If you can get a court order, Ms. Shaw, we will open the box for you. We want this resolved just as much as you do. We stood up. I felt unsteady on my feet. But it wasn't from grief anymore. It was the adrenaline of discovery. Thank you. Mr. Sterling, Catherine said, you have been very helpful. We walked out of the private room, back through the silent bank, past the staring teller. The air outside smelled of exhaust and rain, but to me, it smelled like oxygen. Catherine stopped on the sidewalk and held up the notice of irregularity. We have him, she said. He forged it, I said, the reality sinking in. He forged her signature while she was dying, and he got greedy, Catherine said. He came to the bank too soon. He left a footprint. She put the document in her briefcase and snapped it shut. I am going to draft a petition for an emergency hearing, she said. We are going to ask the judge to compel the production of that notary journal. If he forged a power of attorney, he needed a notary, and if he has a notary in his pocket, we are going to burn them both. I looked back at the bank. It no longer looked like a fortress that was keeping me out. It looked like a vault that was keeping Rex's secrets safe until I was ready to come for them. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. The heavy, crushing weight of the last week was lifting. My mother was not just a victim. Even in death, she had left tripwires. She had forced him to forge papers because she hadn't given him the real ones. I am ready, I told Catherine. Good, she said, checking her watch. Because now we have to deal with the fact that while we were in there, Rex probably filed 3 more motions against you. Let us go to war. Zoe. I got into my car. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove, my mind replaying the image of the access log. March 3rd, the day he told me he was protecting the estate. He was not protecting it. He was looting it. And now, I had the receipt. Peace is a luxury I could not afford. After the victory at the bank, I allowed myself exactly 1 hour of relief before the sky fell in again. I was sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by photocopies of the Notice of Irregularity, when the doorbell rang. It was not a polite ring. It was the sharp, authoritative double buzz that usually means trouble. I looked through the peephole. It was a sheriff's deputy. My stomach dropped. I opened the door, trying to look like a woman who was not plotting the downfall of her stepfather, but the deputy did not look interested in my demeanor. He handed me a folded stack of papers. Zoe Sullivan's. You have been served. This is a temporary restraining order filed by Rex Halston. You are required to stay 500 feet away from him and the residence at 42 Oak Creek Drive. I took the papers, my hands trembling with a rage so hot it felt cold. A restraining order. He was flipping the board. I watched the deputy walk away. Then I slammed the door and tore open the packet. The affidavit attached to the order was a work of fiction so complete it belonged on a bookshelf. In it, Rex claimed that I had come to the house screaming and banging on the doors, that I had threatened physical violence during the funeral, and that I was harassing a grieving widower for money. He had taken my confusion and my grief and twisted them into a weapon, but he was not done. 20 minutes later, my phone pinged with a notification from my work email. I was on administrative leave, but I still had access to the server. The subject line was forward concern regarding Zoe Sullivan. It had been forwarded to me by David, my boss, with a simple note. Zoe, do not reply to this. Call me. I opened the email. It was from Rex. He had sent it to the general HR inbox at Ridgeway Mutual Solutions, to whom it may concern. I am writing to you with a heavy heart regarding my stepdaughter, Zoe Sullivan. As you know, her mother recently passed. I feel it is my duty to inform you that Zoe is suffering from a severe mental break. She has been making wild accusations and, I fear, may be using her position to forge financial documents to cope with her loss. I am worried she is a danger to herself and potentially to your company's integrity. Please, get her help. Sincerely, Rex Halston. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the hardwood floor. He was not just trying to steal the inheritance. He was trying to kill my future. He knew that in compliance, reputation is everything. If I was flagged as unstable or a forger, my career was over. He was projecting his own crimes onto me, accusing me of forgery because he had forged the power of attorney. It was a tactic so dirty, so thorough, that I almost admired the brutality of it. I did not have time to call David. I did not have time to scream, because the doorbell rang again. This time, when I looked through the peephole, it was not just one deputy, it was 2 officers in uniform, and standing behind them, looking like a broken man holding a tissue to his nose, was Rex. I opened the door. Ms. Sullivan, the taller officer asked. We have received a complaint of theft. Theft, I repeated, staring past him at Rex. Rex would not meet my eyes. He looked at the ground, shaking his head. I am so sorry. Officers, I did not want to involve the police. I just want Diane's things back. What things I demanded. Stepping onto the porch. Mr. Halston claims you entered the property on March 3rd and removed several items of high value. The officer said, a diamond tennis bracelet, a vintage Rolex, and a folder of financial documents. I laughed. It was a sharp, hysterical sound. He changed the locks. I couldn't get in. You have a key, Zoe, Rex said softly. His voice was thick with fake tears. You used the old key to scratch the door. And then you climbed through the back window. I found the latch broken. You are lying. I said, you are a liar. Rex? Ma'am. Calm down, the officer said, putting a hand on his belt. We need to ask you if you have these items in your possession. I do not. I said, you can search the apartment. I have nothing. Rex looked up then. For the first time, he looked directly at me. His eyes did not look at my face. They drifted down to the large leather tote bag I had dropped by the door when I came in from the bank. He stared at that bag with a hunger that gave him away. He did not care about a diamond bracelet. He did not care about a Rolex. He was looking for the papers. He was looking for the evidence he knew I was hunting. He thought I had found the blue folder or the Schedule A, and he had brought the police here to legally search my bag and take them back. Officer, Rex said, pointing a trembling finger. That bag. She always carries her things in that bag. If she took the documents, they would be in there. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, do you consent to a search of that bag? I looked at Rex. I saw the panic behind his performance. He was desperate. He had taken a massive risk bringing the police here, hoping to catch me with the documents. Go ahead, I said. I picked up the bag and dumped it upside down on the porch. My wallet fell out, my keys, a lipstick, a pack of gum, and the single, folded photocopy of the email from Margaret, which looked like nothing more than a scrap of trash. There were no diamonds. There was no blue folder. Rex's face fell. For a split second, the grieving widower vanished, replaced by a man who realized he had just swung at the devil and missed. Is that everything the officer asked? Looking at the pile? That is everything, I said. Rex stared at the pile. He looked furious, but he recovered quickly. He rubbed his eyes. Maybe she hid them inside, he muttered, or maybe she sold them already. Mr. Halston, the officer said, his tone shifting slightly. You said you saw her take them today, I assumed. Rex stammered. I mean, they are missing. She is the only one with a motive. The officer turned back to me. Ms. Sullivan, we are going to write a report, but without evidence of possession or forced entry, we cannot detain you. However, given the restraining order, I suggest you stay away from your stepfather. I am not the one who came to her house. Officer, I said coldly. The police ushered Rex away. He walked back to his car, his shoulders hunched, but before he got in, he turned and looked at me one last time. It was a look of pure hatred. He knew I had something, but he couldn't prove what it was. As soon as their cruiser turned the corner, I called Catherine. He called the cops on me. I said, my voice shaking. He accused me of theft. He tried to get them to seize my bag. Catherine listened to the whole story. She did not sound worried. She sounded vindicated. He is flailing. Zoe, she said, a man who feels safe does not file a restraining order and call the police on the same day. He is trying to build a wall of noise to drown out the signal. He emailed my job. I said, he told them I was forging documents. Good, Catherine said. Good, how is that good? Because it proves malice, she said. It proves a pattern of harassment. But more importantly, Zoe, did you see how he looked at your bag? Yes, I said. He couldn't take his eyes off it. He thinks you have the Schedule A, she said. That means he hasn't found it. That means the safe deposit box is still the key. She paused, the sound of her typing in the background. I want you to do one thing. Zoe, go to the police station tomorrow morning. Request the body cam footage from the officers who came to your door. Why? Because I want a jury to see his eyes, Catherine said. I want them to see a grieving husband who isn't looking at his stepdaughter, but is scanning her property for a piece of paper. It shows intent. It shows he is on a hunt. I hung up and sat on my porch steps. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me exhausted. I felt dirty. I felt like he had dragged me through the mud, and no matter how much I showered, I would still look like a suspect to my neighbors, to my boss, to the world. That is how men like Rex win. They do not need to be right. They just need to make you look wrong enough that people stop listening. I went inside and made a cup of tea I didn't drink. I stared at the wall. The sun went down, and the apartment filled with shadows. At 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. I thought it was David, or maybe another threat from Rex. I picked it up. It was a text message from an unknown number. The area code was from Florida. I opened it. There was no greeting, no name. Just 3 sentences that stopped my heart. Check the marriage license. Rex was married to a woman named Jenna in Tampa in 1998. I don't think he ever signed the divorce papers. I stared at the screen. The light from the phone was the only thing in the dark room. I don't think he ever signed the divorce papers. If Rex was not legally divorced from his first wife, then his marriage to my mother was void. It was bigamy. And if the marriage was void, he was not the surviving spouse. He was not the next of kin. He was a legal stranger. He had no right to be the personal representative. He had no right to the house. He had no right to check a single box on a single form. He wouldn't just lose the money. He would lose his standing to even step foot in the courtroom. I typed back, "Who is this?" The dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Someone who wants to see him burn as much as you do." I took a screenshot of the message, then another. I sat back against the couch cushions and let out a breath I'd been holding since the funeral. Rex had spent the day attacking my character. He had called me a thief, a liar, a forger, and a mental case. He had tried to bury me under a mountain of shame, but he had forgotten to check his own foundation. I forwarded the screenshot to Catherine with a note. "We need a private investigator in Tampa." The war had shifted. It was no longer just about who got the money. It was about who Rex Halston actually was. And if this text was true, the man trying to kick me out of my mother's house was about to find out that he didn't even have a ticket to the show. The text message about Rex's potential bigamy was a grenade. But Catherine Shaw insisted we do not pull the pin just yet. She wanted more ammunition. She wanted to bury him under so much evidence that when we finally detonated the marriage license, he would already be buried up to his neck in fraud charges. So, while the private investigator started digging in Florida, Catherine hired Marcus. Marcus was a forensic accountant. He did not look like a detective. He looked like a high school algebra teacher who had given up on joy. He wore short-sleeved dress shirts and spoke in a monotone that made the most exciting theft sound like a weather report. We met in Catherine's conference room 2 days after the incident with the police. The table was covered in bank statements, credit reports, and the inventory list Rex had partially submitted to the probate court. "This is sloppy," Marcus said. He did not look up from the spreadsheet on his laptop. "How sloppy?" Catherine asked. "Amateur hour," Marcus said. He turned the laptop around so we could see. "Rex claimed your mother left significant debts," Marcus explained. He listed 4 promissory notes totaling $120,000. He claims these are personal loans she took out over the last year to cover gambling losses. I shook my head. Mom never gambled. She thought bingo was a waste of time. "The notes look official," Marcus continued. "They are drafted on proper letterhead. They have interest rates and repayment schedules. But look at the lender." He pointed to the top of the document. "Halston River Holdings, LLC. I have never heard of them." I said, "Neither had the Secretary of State until 3 weeks ago." Marcus said, he clicked a tab. "This LLC was formed on February 26th. That is 2 days before your mother had her stroke." "And who is the registered agent?" Catherine asked, though she clearly already guessed the answer. "It is a blind trust in Delaware," Marcus said, "but the filing fee was paid by a credit card." He slid a bank statement across the table. It was Rex's personal Visa card. "He created a shell company," Catherine said, her voice cold. "He lent his own wife imaginary money from a company that didn't exist yet, and now he is trying to pay himself back out of her estate. He is essentially washing the money. He takes the cash from the estate to pay the debt, puts it into the LLC, and then withdraws it. It gets worse," Marcus said. He pulled up another document. This one was a deed. I recognized the address immediately. It was a small cabin near Lake City. Mom had bought it years ago as a rental property. It wasn't worth millions, but it was worth at least $300,000. "This is a quitclaim deed," Marcus said. "It transfers ownership of the cabin from Diane Sullivan to Halston River Holdings for the sum of $10. I looked at the date next to Mom's signature. February 28th. I read aloud. That was the day she went to the hospital. I said, I pulled out my phone to check the timeline I had made. The ambulance came at 10 in the morning. She was unconscious by noon. Marcus zoomed in on the signature block. "Look at the ink," he said. I leaned in. On the screen. The difference was subtle but undeniable. The notary's stamp and signature are in blue ballpoint pen. Marcus said, "The date is written in the same blue ballpoint, but your mother's signature. That is black gel ink. And look at the pressure." He switched to a high-contrast view. When people sign a document, they rest their hand on the paper. It leaves microscopic indentations and oil smears. The notary signature has those. The date has those. The signature of Diane Sullivan does not. It floats. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the signature was likely added later, or the document was manipulated," Marcus said. "But the biggest red flag is the medical record." Catherine slapped a folder onto the table. "I subpoenaed the hospital logs yesterday," she said, "on February 28th. From 8 in the morning until she passed. Diane Sullivan was in the neuro ICU. She was intubated. She was restrained. She was medically incapacitated, so she couldn't have signed it." I said, "Physically impossible," Catherine said, "unless the notary brought the book into the ICU, which the hospital visitor log says did not happen. So he forged it." I said, "He stole the cabin. He stole the cabin. He fabricated the debts, and he is trying to liquidate the cash," Catherine summarized, "and he used a notary to do it." "Who is the notary?" I asked. Catherine looked at the deed. "A woman named Linda Baker." I looked her up. "She works at the same shipping store where Rex has a private mailbox." Catherine stood up and walked to the window. "In estate law, we call this the metallic smell," she said. "You can smell the fraud because it is cold and hard and man-made. Rex got greedy. If he had just taken the cash, we might have had a hard time proving it was not a gift. But real estate leaves a trail. To move land, you need a public record, and to create a public record, you need a notary." She turned back to us. "We are done waiting. I am filing a motion to compel production of Linda Baker's notary journal in Colorado. A notary journal is a public record. If she refuses, she loses her commission. If she produces it, we catch them." Why, I asked. "Because a journal logs the signer's presence," Catherine said. "It logs the type of ID presented. It requires a thumbprint for real estate transactions. If Mom was in a coma, she didn't give a thumbprint, and if there is a thumbprint, it isn't hers." We filed the motion that afternoon. The reaction was immediate and violent. 2 days later, I was at home, trying to sort through Mom's old emails, when a courier arrived. This was not a sheriff. This was a private messenger. He handed me a letter on thick, expensive bond paper. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize, not Arthur Vance. Rex had hired a real defense firm. "Cease and desist," the header screamed in bold letters. The letter accused me of defamation, slander, and tortious interference with the administration of an estate. It claimed that my wild accusations regarding the validity of the debts and the property transfers were causing Mr. Halston extreme emotional distress. It threatened a countersuit for $200,000 in damages if I did not withdraw my motions immediately. I called Catherine. Her voice was calm, almost cheerful. "He hired Gibson and Dunn," she asked. "That is expensive. He is burning through the estate cash to pay for his defense. He says he will sue me for $200,000. I said, staring at the number. "Let him try," Catherine said. "In a defamation case, truth is an absolute defense. He's trying to scare you." "Zoe, this is the roar of a wounded animal. If he was confident, he would just produce the journal and shut us up. The fact that he is threatening you means the journal is a problem." I hung up, but my hands were still shaking. It is one thing to know you are right. It is another to have a team of lawyers threatening to bankrupt you. I needed to distract myself. I turned back to my laptop. I had managed to guess the password to Mom's secondary email account, the one she used for online shopping and recipes. It was Blue Hydrangea 78, her favorite flower, and the year she married my dad. I had been scrolling through hundreds of emails about potluck dinners and knitting patterns, looking for anything that might help. Then I saw it. It was in the trash folder, but it hadn't been permanently deleted yet. The subject line was, "If anything happens." The date was January 15th, 6 weeks before she died. I clicked on it. My breath hitched. It was an email sent from herself. To herself. "Zoe needs to know where the papers are. I don't trust the house safe anymore. I saw him trying the combination. I'm moving the files to the bank on Tuesday. I am scanning everything to the cloud just in case." My heart raced. She had scanned them. I looked for the attachment icon. There was a paperclip symbol next to the subject line, but when I clicked to open the email, the body was empty. Attachment removed. The file size was 0 kilobytes. I stared at the screen. Someone had logged into this account. Someone had found this email, and someone had deleted the attachment, but they had made a mistake. They deleted the file, but they forgot to empty the trash bin completely. The metadata was still there. I took a screenshot. Then I looked at the access logs for the email account. Last login, March 3rd. IP address, 192.168.1.1. I checked the IP address. It was the home network, the network at Mom's house, on March 3rd. While I was at the bank being told I couldn't access the money, Rex was sitting in my mother's house, logging into her email, and scrubbing the digital evidence of her estate plan. I called Marcus, the forensic accountant. "Can you prove who deleted an attachment?" I asked. "If we have the device?" "Yes," Marcus said. "But even without the device, we can prove the deletion happened after the date of death, and if the account was accessed from the house IP address, and Rex is the only one with keys to the house, it puts him at the scene of the digital crime." I finished. I felt a cold resolve settle over me. Rex wasn't just a thief. He was a systematic eraser. He had erased her will. He had erased her trust. He had erased her digital footprint. He was trying to erase the fact that she had ever made a decision he didn't like. But every time he used an eraser, he left rubber shavings. The phone rang again. It was Catherine. "We got a hearing." She said, "The judge reviewed our motion regarding the notary journal. He was not happy about the discrepancy with the hospital records. When I asked, Friday at 9 in the morning, she said, the judge ordered Linda Baker to appear with her journal, and he ordered Rex to appear to explain the quitclaim deed. Is he coming? He has to." Catherine said, "But Zoe, be ready. Rex is going to come out swinging. He's going to lie. He is going to cry. He is going to play the victim. You have to sit there and be stone. You cannot react." I looked at the screenshot of the deleted email. I looked at the forensic report on the fake debts. "I won't react," I said. "I don't need to scream. Catherine, I just need to hold the light while you cut him open." I hung up. Friday was 3 days away. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I did not sleep. I organized the files. I printed the timeline. I made copies of the "if anything happens" email screenshot. On Thursday night, I drove past the notary's office, the shipping store in the strip mall. It was closed, but I saw a light on in the back. I wondered if Linda Baker was in there, looking at her journal, wondering if $10 for a fake signature was worth a felony charge. I wondered if Rex was calling her, telling her it would be fine, telling her to just say she made a mistake, but mistakes in a notary journal are hard to explain when the person signing the book was in a coma. The game had changed. It wasn't about feelings anymore. It wasn't about stepfather versus daughter. It was about facts versus fraud. And facts have a way of smelling like metal. They are heavy. They are cold. And if you swing them hard enough, they do damage. I went home and laid out my suit for court. It was black, the color of mourning. But tomorrow, it would be the color of the executioner. The strategy Catherine Shaw proposed was simple, effective, and completely humiliating. She wanted me to surrender. "We need him to believe he has won," Catherine said, pacing the length of her office while I stared at the rain streaking the windows. "Right now, Rex is defensive. He has lawyers. He has walls. And he is hiding the ball. If we keep hammering him with subpoenas, he will keep shredding documents. We need him to feel safe enough to put something on paper. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to offer a settlement, she said. Tell him you are tired. Tell him the grief is too much. Tell him you will walk away for a token amount and a non-disclosure agreement. It felt like swallowing glass. After everything he had done, the locks, the police, the lies, I had to go into a room and bow my head. It is a trap. Zoe, Catherine reminded me, seeing the look on my face. The law requires the personal representative to file a complete inventory of assets before any settlement can be approved by the court. He has been stalling on filing that inventory because he knows it is a minefield. But if he thinks filing it is the last step before you disappear forever, he will rush. And when people rush, they make mistakes. I agreed. The meeting took place 3 days later in the conference room of Rex's new high-priced law firm, Gibson & Dunn. The room smelled of leather and intimidation. Rex sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 attorneys in gray suits. He looked rested. The grieving widower act had been replaced by the benevolent patriarch. I sat next to Catherine, keeping my hands folded in my lap so he would not see them shaking. We appreciate you coming to the table, Rex's lead attorney said. Mr. Halston is very eager to resolve this family dispute and allow everyone to heal. Rex nodded at me, a sad, pitying smile on his face. I just want what is best for you. Zoe, your mother would not have wanted us fighting in court. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron. I just want it to be over. Rex, I said, keeping my voice small, I cannot handle the stress. The police coming to my house, it was too much. Rex sighed theatrically. I regret that. Zoe, truly. But I have a duty to protect the estate. His lawyer slid a document across the table. Here is the proposal. The lawyer said, Mr. Halston is willing to offer a one-time cash payment of $25,000. In exchange, Ms. Sullivan will sign a full waiver of claims, a non-disclosure agreement regarding the estate's finances, and will withdraw her petition for the removal of the personal representative. $25,000. It was an insult. It was less than the value of Mom's car. It was hush money, and it was cheap hush money. Catherine looked at the document, feigning consideration. The amount is low, Catherine said. But my client is motivated to close this chapter. However, we cannot advise her to sign a waiver for an estate she has not seen. We need the formal inventory and appraisement. Rex stiffened. Just for a second. The inventory is a formality, Rex said quickly. The estate is insolvent. Catherine, we have discussed this. The debts outweigh the assets. Then put it on paper. Catherine said calmly, file the sworn inventory with the court. Show us the insolvency. Once we see the numbers, Zoe will sign. Rex exchanged a look with his lawyer. The lawyer nodded slightly. They thought they had us. They thought I was desperate for the $25,000 and would sign anything once the paper was filed. Fine, Rex said. We will file the inventory tomorrow. One more thing, I said. I raised my head and looked him in the eye. I need to see the contents of the safe deposit box. The room went silent. Rex's left eye twitched. Just a tiny spasm. The safe deposit box, he asked. Which one? Box 404 at Harborline Trust. I said, the one Mom kept. Rex let out a short, dismissive laugh. Oh, that, Zoe, honey, you are confused. That box was closed years ago. Your mother lost the key and never bothered to drill it. It is empty. The bank likely re-rented it to someone else by now. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had raised a glass at my graduation, the man who had held my mother's hand. He was lying to my face with the ease of someone discussing the weather. He did not know that I had the access log. He did not know that I knew he had been in that closed box on March 3rd. Are you sure? I asked. Positive, Rex said. There is no box. Okay, I said. I looked down at the table. If you file the inventory and it confirms there are no other assets, I will sign. We walked out of the office 10 minutes later. As soon as the elevator doors closed, Catherine let out a breath. He walked right into it. She said, he lied about the box. I said. He is going to leave it off the inventory. He is going to leave a lot of things off, Catherine said. And when he signs that document under penalty of perjury, he is handing us the handcuffs. 2 days later. The notification came from the probate court. Estate of Diane Sullivan inventory and appraisement filed. I sat in Catherine's office as she projected the document onto the wall. It was a list of everything my mother had worked for. Reduced to a spreadsheet. Real estate 42. Oak Creek Drive. Value $600,000. Bank accounts, Harborline checking. Value $4,000. Personal property, household goods. Value $5,000. Total estate. Value $609,000. Total debts, claimed $650,000. He had manufactured enough debt to make the estate worthless. But we were not looking at the totals. We were looking for the lies. There it is, Catherine said, pointing to the bottom of the second page. Section 4. Safety deposit boxes, none. He did it. I said, he swore under oath that the box does not exist, and that is perjury count 1. Catherine said, but look at this. She pointed to the real estate section. He listed the family home, but he did not list the rental property on Miller Street. Wait, I said, Mom owned a small duplex on Miller Street. She bought it before she met Rex. It should be there. Catherine pulled up another document. This one was a recorded deed from the county clerk's office. He claims in the notes here, Catherine said, reading from Rex's inventory, that the Miller Street property was sold on January 15th, 6 weeks before Diane died. He claims the proceeds were used to pay medical bills. She clicked on the county clerk's document on the screen. But look at the recording date on the deed transfer, she said. I looked. The deed transferring the Miller Street property was dated March 5th, 4 days after Mom died. He sold it after she died. I whispered, he sold it after she died, but he backdated the paperwork to make it look like she sold it while she was alive, Catherine explained. He did that so the cash would go into their joint account, which he controls instead of the estate account. He is stealing the equity, and he just swore to a judge that she sold it in January. I said, Catherine smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. He thinks we are just going to read the bottom line and take the $25,000 check, she said. He thinks we are lazy. She picked up her phone. I am filing a motion for contempt and a request for sanctions, she said. And I'm attaching the bank access log and the certified deed from the county. We are not settling. Zoe, we are going for the throat. The hearing was set for the following Tuesday. The atmosphere in the courtroom was different this time. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Patterson, had the inventory in front of her. She also had our motion. Rex stood at the respondent's table. He looked less confident than he had in his lawyer's office. He kept shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Mr. Halston, Judge Patterson said, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. You have submitted a sworn inventory of the estate assets. You understand that omitting assets or falsifying dates on this document is a felony? Yes, Your Honor, Rex said. His voice cracked slightly. Then can you explain, the judge continued, holding up a piece of paper, why you listed the Miller Street property as sold in January, when the deed was not notarized or recorded until March 5th? And can you explain why you listed no safety deposit box, when the court has an access log showing you entered box 4042 days after the decedent's death? Rex turned red. He looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked down at his papers, clearly realizing he had been fed a lie by his own client. Your Honor, Rex stammered, there must be a clerical error. My previous counsel handled the real estate. I was grieving. I might have confused the dates. You confused January with March, the judge asked dryly, and you confused entering a bank vault with the vault not existing. The box was empty, Rex said. I meant it had no value. That is not for you to decide. Sir, the judge snapped. The inventory asks for the existence of the box, not your opinion of its contents. Judge Patterson took off her glasses. Mr. Halston, I am issuing a formal warning. I am appointing a special administrator to audit this inventory at your expense. If I find one more discrepancy One more dollar unaccounted for, or one more date that does not match the public record, I will hold you in contempt, and I will refer this matter to the district attorney for perjury charges. Do you understand? I understand, Rex whispered. He turned and looked at me. It was not a look of hatred anymore. It was a look of fear. He was realizing that the stupid stepdaughter he had tried to buy off with $25,000 had just cornered him in open court. As we left the courtroom, Rex stopped near the water fountain. He turned on his own lawyer. You said they wouldn't check, I heard him hiss. You said she just wanted the money, Mr. Halston. Keep your voice down, his lawyer warned, looking around nervously. It is her fault, Rex said, pointing a shaking finger at me across the hallway. She is manipulating the documents. She is planting this stuff. He was unraveling. The cool, collected sociopath was gone. He was just a desperate man shouting in a hallway. I drove home feeling a strange sense of calm. The trap had worked. He had put his lies on the record, and the record had bitten him back. I was making tea in my kitchen that evening, listening to the rain against the window, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Usually, I let those go to voicemail, but after the text from the Florida number, I had been waiting. I picked it up. Hello, is this Zoe Sullivan? A woman's voice asked. It was raspy, the voice of someone who had smoked for 20 years. But it was strong. Yes, this is Zoe. My name is Jenna, the voice said. I sent you the text about Florida. I almost dropped my mug. Jenna, the first wife. You said he never signed the divorce papers. I said, getting straight to the point, he didn't. Jenna said. She sounded tired. We split up in '98. It was messy. He wanted to keep the house. I wanted to keep my sanity. We signed a separation agreement, and he swore he would file the final dissolution paperwork because he wanted to save money on lawyers. And he didn't file it, I thought he did. Jenna said, I moved to Tallahassee. I never heard from him again, but 3 days ago, a private investigator knocked on my door. He asked to see my divorce decree. That was the investigator Catherine had hired. I went looking for it. Jenna continued, I couldn't find it. So I went to the county clerk. Zoe, the case is listed as dismissed for lack of prosecution in 1999. The judge threw it out because Rex never filed the final judgment. My breath caught in my throat. So you are still married, I asked. Technically, Jenna said. I mean, I have been living my life, but legally, on paper, yes, I am still Mrs. Rex Halston. If Jenna was still his wife, then his marriage to my mother 10 years ago was invalid. Bigamy renders the second marriage void ab initio void from the beginning. That means I started, my mind racing through the implications. It means he is not the surviving spouse, Jenna said. He is not the heir. He is not the personal representative. He is just some guy who was living in your mother's house. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why now? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Because he did it to me, too. Jenna said. When we split, he hid $40,000 in a separate account and told me we were broke. I didn't have the fight in me back then, but I looked him up when the investigator left. I saw the obituary for your mom. I saw what he's trying to do. She took a breath. He doesn't get to win twice. Zoe, I am sending the certified court records to your lawyer tomorrow. I thanked her and hung up. The kitchen was silent, but my head was screaming. This was the kill shot. We had him on fraud. We had him on perjury. But this stripped him of his identity. He wasn't the grieving husband. He wasn't the stepfather protecting the legacy. He was a nobody. And if he wasn't my mother's husband, he had no claim to the house, no claim to the bank accounts, no claim to the insurance. I looked at the rain hitting the glass. Rex had told the judge that I was confused about the dates. He had told the police I was unstable. I picked up my phone and texted Catherine. Jenna called. The divorce was never final. He is a bigamist. Catherine's reply came back 10 seconds later. Checkmate. Rex Halston thought he was fighting a battle over a will. He didn't realize he had just lost the war over his own name. The package from Florida arrived at Catherine Shaw's office at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. It was a standard overnight envelope, flat and unassuming, but when Catherine sliced it open, the contents landed on her mahogany desk with the weight of a gavel. I picked up the top document. It was a certified copy of a court docket from Hillsborough County, Florida, Halston v. Halston, filed June 14, 1998. Status dismissed for lack of prosecution, October 2, 1999. I read the status line 3 times. Dismissed. That means it was thrown out, I said, looking up at Catherine. It means they started the divorce but never finished it, Catherine said. Her eyes were scanning the pages with rapid precision. Rex filed the initial petition. Jenna filed a response. Then, nothing happened for a year. The court sent a warning. Nobody replied, and the judge closed the file. Legally, it is as if the divorce never happened. She picked up a second document. It was a marriage certificate. Rex Halston and Diane Mercer, dated 10 years ago, if he was still married to Jenna in 1999, and there is no subsequent divorce decree, then his marriage to your mother was void from the moment he said I do, Catherine said. She leaned back in her chair, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. In the eyes of the law, Rex Halston is not a surviving spouse. He is a legal stranger. He has no priority to serve as personal representative. He has no right to the spousal allowance. He has no right to the house. He is just a roommate, I whispered. A roommate who stole the keys. Catherine nodded. We are going to file this, but not yet. We are going to hold it, because right now, Rex is panicking about the inventory hearing. If we drop the bigamy bomb now, he might run. We need him to stay in the ring long enough to commit the final error. And he was about to. That afternoon, the subpoena for the bank's security footage yielded results. We sat in Catherine's conference room, watching a grainy black-and-white video on a laptop screen. The timestamp read, March 3rd, 09:12 a.m. The camera angle showed the vault entrance of Harborline Trust. The heavy steel gate stood open. A man walked into the frame. He was wearing a dark raincoat and a hat pulled low. But there was no mistaking the posture. It was Rex. He was alone. He wasn't carrying a grieving husband's burden. He was moving with purpose. He held a piece of paper in his hand, the forged power of attorney. Catherine fast-forwarded the video. At 09:25 a.m., Rex exited the vault. He was walking faster now. He clutched a thick manila envelope under his arm that he hadn't been holding when he went in. He took something. I said, he definitely took something. Catherine paused the video and pointed to the corner of the screen. Look at the desk. At the vault attendant's desk. A young man was sitting, looking terrified. Rex stopped at the desk, leaned over, and said something. He pointed a finger at the young man's face. The young man shrank back, then nodded vigorously. We found that employee, Catherine said. His name is Kevin. He does not work at the bank anymore. He quit 2 weeks ago. My investigator tracked him down at a coffee shop where he's working now. What did Kevin say? He said Rex threatened to have him fired if he didn't let him in. And more importantly, Kevin is willing to testify that Rex gave him a specific instruction regarding the access log. What instruction? Do not write down the time. Catherine quoted. Just put the date. If anyone asks, I was here last week with my wife. I felt a chill. Rex had been building his alibi while the body was still warm. Armed with the video and Kevin's sworn affidavit, Catherine obtained an emergency court order to break the seal on safe deposit box 404. The judge was not interested in Rex's claim that the box was empty anymore. We met the bank manager, Mr. Sterling, at the vault the next morning. A locksmith was there with a drill. Rex was not present. Though his lawyer had been notified, they had chosen not to attend, likely realizing that watching a drill bit cut through their lies was bad optics. The drill whined, a high-pitched scream that echoed in the silent room. Metal shavings curled onto the floor. Then, with a heavy clunk, the lock gave way. Mr. Sterling slid the long metal drawer out. He placed it on the table. I held my breath. Rex had sworn it was empty. He had walked out of there with an envelope. I was prepared for dust, but it wasn't empty. Rex had been sloppy, or maybe he had been rushed. In the back of the drawer, underneath the velvet liner that most people never lift. There were 3 items: a silver USB drive, a white envelope sealed with red wax, and a single, crisp document stapled in a blue cover. I reached for the document first. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely read the title. Schedule A. Property of Mercer Legacy Trust. It was the original, the real list, and it was dated and notarized 4 years ago. I flipped it open. There it was. The house, the brokerage accounts, the rental property on Miller Street, every single asset Rex had tried to hide, sell or claim was debt-ridden, was listed here as a trust asset. He missed it. I said, my voice choking. He took the copies, but he missed the original. Catherine picked up the sealed envelope. It had my name on it in Mom's handwriting. To Zoe. Open only if I am gone. I tore it open. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated 6 months ago. Zoe, I am writing this because I am afraid. Rex has been asking about the accounts. He has been practicing my signature. I found a page in the trash with my name written 50 times in his handwriting. I confronted him, and he laughed it off. But I know him. If something happens to me, do not trust his tears. I am leaving this roadmap for you. Fight him. The house is yours. The life I built is yours. Do not let him win. I wiped a tear from my cheek. She had known. She had lived in fear in her own home, sleeping next to a man who was practicing to steal her identity. What is on the USB? Catherine asked. We plugged it into Mr. Sterling's computer. A video file popped up. We clicked play. The screen showed my mother sitting in a conference room, the library at her old law firm, Calder and Rook. She was wearing her favorite blazer. She looked at the camera, her face serious and clear. My name is Diane Sullivan, she said. The sound of her voice made my heart ache. Today is October 14th, 2020. I am making this recording to verify my estate plan. I have transferred all my assets to the Mercer Legacy Trust. She held up the trust document to the camera. I want to be very clear, she continued. Her eyes steel hard. I have no intention of amending this trust. I have no intention of leaving my estate to my husband, Rex Halston, beyond the spousal stipend listed in Article 4. If any document appears after this date claiming that I have changed my mind, or that I have dissolved this trust, that document is a forgery. It is not my will. This is my final word. The video ended. The silence in the vault was absolute. She testified from the grave, Catherine said softly. She knew he would try to forge an amendment. She blocked him. We left the bank with the evidence in a lockbox. I felt lighter than I had in weeks. We had the smoking gun. We had the bullets. We had the body armor. But Rex was like a cornered rat. He sensed the walls closing in, and he decided to bite. 2 hours after we left the bank, Catherine's phone rang. It was an automated notification from the court's electronic filing system. Catherine looked at her phone, and her eyebrows shot up. You are not going to believe this, she said. What, Rex just filed a document. He must have heard we opened the box. What did he file? Catherine turned her laptop screen toward me. Petition to validate trust amendment. Attached to the petition was a document titled Second Amendment to the Mercer Legacy Trust. It was dated February 25th, 3 days before Mom's stroke. The text was simple. It stated that due to marital reconciliation and undying love, Diane Sullivan was revoking all previous beneficiary designations and appointing Rex Halston as the sole trustee and sole beneficiary of the entire estate. It was signed. It was notarized. I stared at the screen. He is doubling down. I said, he is presenting a fake amendment to override the Schedule A we just found. Catherine started to laugh. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the laugh of a general who just watched the enemy army march into a minefield. He just signed his own death warrant, she said. Why, I asked. It looks official. Because, Catherine said, tapping the screen, he dated it February 25th. So, look at the video we just watched. Your mother said if any document appears, but that is subjective. The real trap is the notary. She pulled up the signature page of Rex's new fake amendment. The notary stamp belonged to the same woman, Linda Baker, the one from the shipping store. But look at the venue. Catherine pointed out. "The document says it was signed in City of Briar Glen, County of Arapahoe." "Yes, on February 25th, Catherine said, her eyes gleaming. "Your mother was not in Briar Glen." I frowned, trying to remember. She was with me, I realized. "We went to the outlet mall in Castle Rock. We were there all day." "Castle Rock is in Douglas County," Catherine said. "Not Arapahoe, but that is just a geography error. The real problem is Linda Baker." Catherine pulled up a background check on Linda Baker. Linda Baker's notary commission expired on February 1st. Catherine said, "She renewed it." "Yes, but the state database shows her new commission number was not issued until March 1st. I looked at the stamp on Rex's document. It listed a commission expiration date 4 years in the future. He used her new stamp. I realized, exactly. Catherine said, "He used a stamp that did not exist on the date the document was supposedly signed. He backdated the paper to February 25th. But he used a stamp that wasn't issued until March." She closed the laptop with a snap. "He just filed a verifiable forgery with the court. He didn't just lie to us, Zoe. He lied to the judge." She looked at me. "We are not going to tell him," she said. We are not going to file a motion to dismiss," she said. "We are going to let him walk into the courtroom next week. We are going to let him take the stand. We are going to let him swear on the Bible that this document is real. And then we show the journal." I said, "Then we show the journal, the commission dates, the video, and the bigamy records." Catherine said, "We are going to let him hang himself, and we are going to let him tighten the knot." The amendment was not a shield. It was, as Catherine had said, a noose, and Rex Halston had just put his head right through it. I went home that night and looked at the empty space on my wall where Mom's clock used to be. "Bring it back," I whispered to the empty room. "I am going to bring it all back." The trial was set. The evidence was locked and loaded. The blue folder hadn't just been found. It had been weaponized. And the man who thought he could rewrite my mother's life with a pen was about to learn that ink never really dries. It just waits to stain your hands. The morning of the hearing, the sky over Briar Glen was a bruised purple, threatening a storm that refused to break. It felt appropriate. Inside the Arapahoe County Courthouse, the air was recycled and smelled faintly of floor wax and stale anxiety. We were in Probate Courtroom 4. It was smaller than the criminal courtrooms you see on television. There was no gallery full of weeping relatives, no jury box packed with peers. There was just a heavy oak table for the plaintiff, one for the respondent, and a high bench where Judge Patterson sat like a monolith in black robes. I sat next to Catherine Shaw. She was wearing a navy suit so sharp it could cut glass. Her binder was open, tabs color-coded, her face a mask of bored competence, across the aisle. Rex Halston sat with his new lead attorney, a man named Mr. Finch, who wore a suit that cost more than my car and a smile that cost him his soul. Rex looked good. He had shaved. His hair was perfectly coiffed, and he wore a tie that was a somber, trusting blue. He looked at me as we sat down, and for a second, I saw the old Rex, the one who would grill burgers in the backyard and ask about my grades. He gave me a sad, tight nod, as if to say, "I forgive you for this tantrum." "Zoe," it made my skin crawl. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Patterson entered. She did not look at us. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and opened the file. "We are here on the matter of the estate of Diane Sullivan," she said. "We have multiple motions pending, a motion to remove the personal representative, a motion to compel, and a petition to validate a trust amendment. Let us start with the evidentiary disputes." Mr. Finch stood up immediately. "Your Honor," he began, his voice rich and smooth. "Before we address the amendment, we must address the so-called evidence the petitioner has submitted. Specifically, this USB drive found in a bank vault." He held up the plastic bag containing the drive we had retrieved. "We move to strike this video from the record," Finch said. "It is hearsay. It is an unverified recording made without counsel present. We have no way of knowing if the decedent was under duress, if she was medicated, or if the video was digitally altered. It is a theatrical prop. Your Honor, not a legal instrument. I gripped the edge of the table. If they threw out the video, we lost Mom's voice. Catherine stood up. She did not rush. Your Honor, this is not hearsay. This is a declaration of intent, preserved in a secure chain of custody. We have the access logs from Harborline Trust, proving this drive was placed in the box on October 14th, 2020, and was not touched until this court ordered the box opened. Catherine turned and pointed to the back of the room. Furthermore, we have Margaret Lewis here today. She is the former paralegal at Calder and Rook. She is prepared to testify that she held the camera while Diane Sullivan spoke these words. This was not a selfie video made in a basement. It was a formal documentation of the grantor's intent. Judge Patterson looked at Finch. Do you have any evidence that the video is altered? Counselor. Well, no. But Finch started, then I'm admitting it. The judge ruled, not as a testamentary document, but as evidence of the grantor's state of mind regarding the trust. Rex's jaw tightened. One brick in his wall had just cracked. Now, the judge said, looking at the papers, let us get to the heart of it. Mr. Halston, you have filed a petition to validate a Second Amendment to the Mercer Legacy Trust. You claim this document supersedes the Schedule A found in the safe deposit box. Yes, Your Honor, Finch said. He walked to the bench and handed up the document, the one dated February 25th, the one with the new notary stamp. This document, Finch declared, represents Diane Sullivan's final wishes. It was signed just 3 days before her tragic stroke. In it, she explicitly names Rex Halston as the sole beneficiary and trustee, citing their renewed marital bond. The judge took the document. She read it in silence. I looked at Rex. He was sitting up straighter now. This was his gamble. He knew the video was damaging, so he had manufactured a piece of paper that bided it. He was betting that a signed, notarized legal document would trump a 4-year-old video. Catherine leaned over to me. Watch his hands, she whispered. Rex's hands were clasped on the table, but his knuckles were white. Mr. Finch, Judge Patterson said, this amendment is dated February 25th. Correct, Your Honor. And it was notarized by Linda Baker. Your Honor. Ms. Baker is a licensed notary public. Judge Patterson looked over her glasses at the defense table. Is Ms. Baker present? She is, Finch said. We brought her to verify the signature. Should the court require it, call her, the judge said. Linda Baker walked to the stand. She was a small woman with frizzy hair, wearing a cardigan that seemed too large for her. She clutched her purse like a shield. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who worked at a shipping store and was currently terrified of being in a courtroom. She was sworn in. Ms. Baker, Finch asked gently, do you recognize this document? Linda squinted at the paper. Yes, that is my signature, and my stamp. And did you witness Diane Sullivan sign this document on February 25th? Linda hesitated. Her eyes darted to Rex. Rex gave her a hard, staring look. Yes, Linda said, her voice barely a whisper. She came in. With her husband. She signed it. Thank you, Finch said. Your witness? Catherine stood up. She walked toward the witness stand. She did not hold the document. She held nothing. Ms. Baker, Catherine said pleasantly, you work at the Pack and Ship on 4th Street, correct? Yes. It is a busy store, usually, so you notarize a lot of documents. Yes, ma'am. Do you remember Diane Sullivan specifically? Or do you just recognize your own stamp? Linda shifted in her seat. I remember her. She was nice. Catherine nodded. And you are sure this happened on February 25th? Yes, that is the date on the paper. Catherine walked back to our table and picked up a heavy, black ledger. It was the bound book we had subpoenaed. The notary journal. Ms. Baker, Catherine said, her voice dropping an octave. In Colorado, a notary is required to keep a journal of every single notarial act. Is this your journal? Yes. And you brought this with you today under court order? Yes. Catherine opened the book. She flipped through the pages with agonizing slowness. The sound of the paper turning was the only noise in the room. Ms. Baker, Catherine said, stopping at a page. I am looking at the entries for February 25th. Can you tell me why I do not see Diane Sullivan's name here? Rex jumped up. Objection, he shouted. He didn't wait for his lawyer. Objection. She is confusing the witness. Mr. Halston? Sit down. Judge Patterson barked. Finch pulled Rex back into his chair, whispering furiously. Rex's face was red. He was sweating now. Catherine ignored him. She kept her eyes on Linda. Ms. Baker. Linda licked her lips. Sometimes we get busy. Maybe I forgot to write it down. It happens. You forgot? Catherine asked. You forgot to log a document that transferred an estate worth $600,000, I guess so. Catherine turned a page. Interesting. Catherine said, because on February 25th, your journal shows you notarized a car title transfer at 10 in the morning and a permission slip at 2 in the afternoon, but no trust amendment. She closed the book. But let us look at March 5th, Catherine said, 4 days after Diane Sullivan died. Rex made a noise in his throat. It sounded like a strangled animal. Catherine walked to the judge's bench. Your Honor, I would like to submit the journal into evidence. Specifically, page 42. Finch stood up. Your Honor, if the witness says she forgot to log it, the absence of an entry is not proof of fraud. It is just clerical error. We shall see. Judge Patterson said, Bring me the journal. Catherine handed the book up. The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I could hear my own heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Judge Patterson put on her reading glasses. She opened the book to the bookmark Catherine had placed. She read. She frowned. She read again. Rex was staring at the book. His eyes were wide, terrified. He knew what was in there, or rather, he knew what he had forced Linda to write. He had been so careful to backdate the document. He had been so careful to get the new stamp, but he had forgotten that a journal is a chronological record. You cannot insert a line in the middle of a completed page. You have to write at the bottom. If Linda had written the entry on the day she actually signed it, March 5th, but dated it February 25th in the column, it would be out of sequence. It would appear after entries for February 26th, 27th, and 28th. Or, if she had tried to squeeze it in, it would look crushed. Judge Patterson looked up from the book. Her expression had changed. The judicial neutrality was gone. In its place was the cold, hard glare of a woman who realizes she is being played. She looked at Linda Baker. Ms. Baker, the judge said, you are under oath. Yes, Your Honor. The judge turned the book around so the courtroom could see. This entry here, the judge said, pointing to a line. It is dated February 25th. It lists Trust Amendment as the document. Rex let out a breath. He slumped slightly, looking relieved. He thought he had gotten away with it. He thought the entry was there, but the judge wasn't finished. However, the judge said, her voice slicing through the air, this entry is the last one on the page. The entry immediately above it is dated March 3rd. I gasped. You cannot have a February 25th entry after a March 3rd entry. The judge said, unless you possess a time machine. Ms. Baker. Linda Baker burst into tears. I am sorry, she wailed. He made me do it. He said it was just correcting a mistake. He said his wife meant to sign it. Finch closed his eyes and put his face in his hands. He knew it was over. Rex stood up. He was shaking. She is lying, he shouted, pointing at the crying woman. She is incompetent. I never, Mr. Halston, the judge roared. Silence. But Rex couldn't stop. He was watching his entire scheme disintegrate in real time. It is my money, he yelled, his voice cracking. I took care of her. I fixed the roof. I paid the bills. She owed me. He wasn't arguing the law anymore. He was confessing the motive. Catherine sat down next to me. She didn't smile. She didn't look triumphant. She just uncapped her pen and wrote a single word on her legal pad. Done. But I wasn't looking at Catherine. I was looking at Rex, the man who had terrified me for weeks, the man who had made me feel small and crazy, was now just a pathetic figure standing in a suit that suddenly looked too big for him. He had tried to use paper to steal a life. but he had forgotten the first rule of paper: it remembers the order in which it was touched. Judge Patterson slammed the journal shut. The sound was like a gunshot. "Bailiff, secure the witness," she ordered, gesturing to Linda Baker. "And Mr. Finch, I suggest you advise your client to sit down and shut up before I hold him in contempt right now." Rex sat. He collapsed into his chair. Staring at the table, he looked gray. The judge turned her gaze on him. It was a withering, terrifying look. "Mr. Halston," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "we are going to take a 15-minute recess, during which time I am going to forward a copy of this journal to the district attorney's office." She paused. "But before I do that, I want you to look at one more document." She pulled a piece of paper from her own file. It wasn't the journal. It wasn't the trust. It was the document Catherine and I had held in reserve, the one from Florida. The judge held it up. "Mr. Finch, does your client recognize this marriage license from 1998? Finch looked at Rex. Rex looked at the paper. His face went from gray to white. "I want you to explain a document to me, Mr. Halston," the judge said, leaning over the bench, "and I want you to choose your words very, very carefully." Judge Patterson did not scream. She did not bang her gavel. She simply held the notary journal in the air, her hand steady, presenting it like a sacred text that had just been desecrated. The silence in courtroom 4 was absolute. It was the kind of heavy, pressurized silence that usually precedes a structural collapse. "I want you to explain this entry, Mr. Halston," the judge repeated. Her voice was terrifyingly conversational. She opened the book again, pressing it flat against the bench so the spine cracked. "We have established that this entry was written out of chronological order," she said. "We have established that it was squeezed in at the bottom of a page, dated February 25th, below an entry dated March 3rd. But let us look at the columns." She traced her finger across the page. Column 4, signer, present. She looked up at Rex. "The law requires the signer of the document to be physically present before the notary. That is the entire purpose of the act. Yet, in this column, Ms. Baker did not check the box for Diane Sullivan. She wrote a note." The judge leaned forward. "It says only Rex Halston appeared." I heard a gasp from the back of the room. It was Margaret, the paralegal. "If Diane Sullivan was not present," the judge continued, her voice hardening into steel, "then she did not sign this trust amendment. You cannot notarize a ghost." "Mr. Halston." Rex gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles were white, the blood draining from his hands just as it had drained from his face. "She was sick," Rex stammered. His voice was thin, reedy. "She couldn't come in. She was frail. I went for her." "You went for her," the judge asked, "to sign a document that gave you her entire estate. She wanted me to." Rex cried out. "We discussed it." "Let us look at column 5, the judge interrupted, ignoring his outburst. "Identification produced." She looked down at the book again. "Ms. Baker recorded the driver's license number of the alleged signer, Diane Sullivan. Number 59432. Catherine Shaw stood up. She held a single piece of paper. "Your Honor," Catherine said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade, "we have submitted Exhibit D. It is a certified report from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Diane Sullivan's driver's license expired 2 years ago. She surrendered it when she stopped driving due to her vision. The number recorded in this journal does not match her last valid state ID. It matches an old license that was in a drawer at her home." The judge looked at Rex. "So, you went to the notary alone," the judge summarized. "You brought a document you claimed your wife signed. You brought an old, expired ID card you took from her desk, and you bullied a notary into stamping a lie. It wasn't a lie?" Rex shouted. He stood up, knocking his chair back. It clattered against the wall. "It was her intent. I was her husband. I had the power of attorney. And there it was, the confession." The room seemed to freeze. "Mr. Finch," Rex's lawyer, closed his eyes and slowly lowered his head to the table. He knew what had just happened. Rex had just admitted, on the record, in open court, that he had used a power of attorney to execute the document. Judge Patterson took off her glasses. She looked at Rex with an expression that was almost pitying, but mostly disgusted. "Mr. Halston," she said quietly, "a power of attorney is an instrument of agency. It allows you to act on behalf of a living person." She picked up the death certificate from her file. The authority of a power of attorney expires at the moment of death. It turns to dust. You cannot use a power of attorney to transfer assets, open safe deposit boxes, or amend trusts after the principal has died. And you certainly cannot use it to sign a document backdated to when she was alive, when you admit you were the only one standing at the counter. Rex opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked around the room, searching for an ally, but found only the cold stares of the bailiffs and the blank lens of the security camera. "But I needed to protect the assets," he whispered. "Protect them from whom the judge asked. From her daughter. From the rightful beneficiary named in the very trust you tried to rewrite." Catherine stepped forward. "Your Honor," Catherine said, "we also remind the court of the video evidence from the bank vault. On March 3rd, 2 days after the death, the defendant used that same invalid power of attorney to access the safe deposit box and remove the digital backups. This was not a mistake. This was a calculated, multi-step operation to erase the decedent's estate plan and replace it with a fabrication." The judge nodded. She began to write. The scratching of her pen was loud in the silence. "Please stand." "Mr. Halston," she ordered. Rex stood. He looked small. The suit that had looked so expensive an hour ago now looked like a costume. Based on the evidence presented, specifically the notary journal of Linda Baker, the testimony regarding the safe deposit box access, and the admission of the respondent, this court issues the following findings. She looked him in the eye. 1. The document titled Second Amendment to the Mercer Legacy Trust is declared void ab initio. It is a forgery. 2. The quitclaim deed, transferring the cabin to Halston River Holdings, is declared void. The property is returned to the trust immediately. 3. The promissory notes totaling $120,000 are declared fraudulent and unenforceable. Rex swayed on his feet. He reached for the table to steady himself. 4. The judge continued, her voice relentless. Rex Halston is hereby removed as personal representative of the estate. You are stripped of all fiduciary powers. You are ordered to vacate the residence at 42 Oak Creek Drive within 48 hours. 48 hours, Rex gasped. But that is my home. It is the trust's home, the judge corrected. And since your marriage to the decedent has been challenged by evidence of bigamy, which I am also entering into the record, you have no marital claim to the property. You are a trespasser. 5, she finished. I am referring this entire file, including the notary journal and the hearing transcript, to the district attorney's office for investigation into fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. She banged her gavel. The sound cracked through the room like a thunderclap. This court is adjourned. The bailiff moved toward Rex. Not to arrest him, not yet, but to ensure he didn't run. Rex didn't look like he could run. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. He looked at me across the aisle. "Zoe," he said. His voice was a rasp. "Zoe, please, I have nowhere to go." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had changed the locks on me while I was burying my mother. I looked at the man who had called the police on me. I looked at the man who had tried to erase my mother's voice for a rental property and a bank account. I stood up. I picked up my bag, the same bag he had tried to have the police search. You should have thought about that before you picked up the pen. "Rex," I said. I turned my back on him. I walked out of the courtroom with Catherine. We walked down the long marble hallway, our heels clicking in unison. We didn't speak until we pushed through the heavy double doors and stepped out into the Colorado air. The storm had broken, the rain had stopped, and the sun was cutting through the clouds, reflecting off the wet pavement. We won, I said. I barely recognized my own voice. It sounded stronger, deeper. "We didn't just win," Catherine said, putting on her sunglasses. "We annihilated him." She handed me a folder. Inside was the certified order from the judge. "This is your key," she said. "The locksmith is meeting us at the house in an hour." I drove to the house, my mother's house. When I pulled into the driveway, Rex's car was still there, but he wasn't. He was likely still at the courthouse, trying to explain to Mr. Finch why he hadn't mentioned the bigamy. The locksmith was waiting. He was a big man with a kind face. He looked at the court order, then at the door. "You want the locks changed, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "All of them." I stood on the porch while he worked. I looked at the garden Mom had planted. The hydrangeas were starting to bloom. They were blue. When the locksmith was finished, he handed me a shiny new silver key. It felt heavy in my hand. Cold. Real. I put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly. The door clicked open. I walked inside. The house was quiet. It smelled of lemon polish and stale air. Rex's things were still there, his coat on the rack, his shoes by the mat. But the energy was different. The oppression was gone. I walked to the living room. I saw the empty spot on the wall where the grandfather clock used to be. I would get it back. I would track down the buyer, show them the court order, and bring it home. I would bring it all home. I sat down in Mom's armchair. I pulled the USB drive out of my pocket, the one from the safe deposit box. I held it tight. Rex had tried to tell the world that my mother was a debtor. He had tried to tell the world she was weak. He had tried to tell the world she belonged to him, but he had failed. He failed not because I was louder than him. He failed not because I was richer than him. He failed because he underestimated the power of a woman who leaves a note. He thought paper was something you could burn. He didn't realize that paper is a memory that doesn't fade. I looked at the coffee table where he had tried to make me sign the disclaimer. I imagined him sitting there, smug, smiling, thinking he was the king. And then I imagined the look on his face when the judge read the notary journal. Only Rex Halston appeared. 4 words. 4 words written in a column by a scared woman in a shipping store. 4 words that dissolved $1 million of lies. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. I was 34 years old. I was alone in a big house. I had a long road ahead of me to clean up the mess he had made. But I had the keys. And for the first time since the stroke, I could hear my mother's voice in the silence. She wasn't crying. She was laughing. She was laughing because she knew. In the end, the blue folder wasn't just a file. It was a promise, and we had kept it. Thank you so much for listening to this story of justice and retribution. If you enjoyed seeing Rex get exactly what he deserved, please take a moment to scroll down and leave a comment telling me where in the world you are tuning in from. I love reading your stories and connecting with you all. Don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories for more dramas where the truth always wins. Hit that like button to support the channel, and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who need to see justice served.